Let's start with the announcement that you want employers in key sectors to sign up to rapid testing programmes for their workers. When do you want them to be rapid testing all staff by?
So larger employers have already signed up to the program. So this is employers with over 250 employees. We've now announced that we'll also work with smaller employers, so 50 employees and more. And it's immediately, it's part of the same program that we are just rolling out. We've done something similar with local government, where local government now has the lateral flow test that they can offer critical frontline workers as well, so that people feel protected as they're going to work. We've introduced it. I don't know whether you've been to Parliament recently, but we've done it in Parliament as well, where in Portcullis House, you go up to the Attlee room and you get your lateral flow test as you go in and do it twice a week. So it is all part of the much greater use of testing because vaccine rollout and, of course, surge testing, as we're seeing now in Woking in Worcestershire, and this testing with employees and the critical workforce is how we're going to get our lives back and our economy back.
Could I just press you on that? So, for example, if a supermarket worker is listening to the programme right now, when should they expect to have that lateral flow test at work?
So a lot of the large supermarket chains are already doing it for their staff. The NHS doing it for the NHS workforce weekly. So that's already in place. This is now taking it to smaller employers as well, which is where the announcement we've just made, and we're rolling it out in the days and weeks to come.
In the days and weeks. Thanks very much. Earlier this morning, on a different programme, you said that the government won't introduce a vaccine passport. Wasn't that really the only way that Brits might have been able to take a summer holiday abroad this year?
So if it's a requirement from another country that you're visiting, which obviously some countries have done in the past with other viruses, then you can ask your GP, obviously, which holds your records, for proof that you've been vaccinated. We are not looking to introduce a UK wide vaccine passport because actually, well, several reasons. One, we don't yet know the impact of the vaccines on transmission. Two, it would be discriminatory because because we don't mandate vaccines. It's not how we do things, as Boris quite rightly told the House. We're not looking at introducing a UK vaccine passport, but if other countries need proof, then we will facilitate that for people through obviously their National Health Service and the GPs.
Okay. The other thing that you have said is that the government, will check on people coming into the UK, checking that they're in the place they have put on their passenger locator form. So this is not for the people in hotels. We understand that. This is people coming in for the non-red countries. How will you check that they are in the place they have put on their passenger locator form?
Well, so first of all, now passenger locator forms are mandatory and there's a fine if you don't fill them in. And of course, the airlines will turn you away if you don't have a passenger locator form or a pre-departure test result. The important thing is that as you arrive in the UK, you go into 10-day quarantine. And of course, on your passenger locator form, there's your address and your phone, and we'll be making random checks across the country to make sure that people are complying. And if they're not, then of course they will be fined. If you are a resident of the United Kingdom or a United Kingdom national, and you're coming back from the countries of concern, the 33 countries, then you will go into the hotel quarantine as of the 15th of February.
Random checks. Is that operational now, or is there a date by which that will become operational? I assume you mean a phone call or a house visit?
The random checks have been operational, and we continue to do that. It's normally a phone call, and you have to confirm, of course, your where you are, your address, and that is how we do things. We are enhancing that to make sure we do more of that. And the other thing that now we have is this capacity to test people. We have an 800,000 a day capacity. So we're going to be doing much greater quarantine and test both in hotels and at home.
Okay. Uh, all over 50s you hope will be vaccinated, the first jab at least, by May. That's an accurate thing for me to say, isn't it? I just want to
Yes, it is.
clarify before my next question. Yes, it is. Right. Okay. There are about
With
400,000.
one proviso, my absolute focus now is mid-February for the top 4 cohorts, because that is 15 million by mid-February, and they are the most vulnerable and those who look after them. That's 88% of mortality. And then by May, obviously the 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Mm-hmm. So there are about 400,000 teachers who are under 50. We know that you want to open schools from the beginning of March, from early March. When will those teachers be vaccinated?
So as far as the teachers are concerned, once phase 1 is done, which is the top 9 cohorts, and by the way, really important point. So we're reaching that point of mid-February where we've offered the vaccine to the top 4 cohorts. 5 is the over 65s. 6, so 5 and 6, where we will do next, and we're getting to that point where we're going to start doing that, is the 16 to 64-year-olds in category 6 who will have any form of underlying ailment that put them at high risk, that their GP decides that they're at high risk. A lot of the teachers who worry about the COVID infection, who fall into that, or of course who fall into category 9, the over 50s, will be captured in phase 1. Phase 2,
sorry,
we
continue.
go to, no, forgive me. Phase 2, we then go back to the JCVI, the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, and we're asking them the question to look at frontline workers as a category, i.e., policemen and women, teachers, shop workers, who through no fault of their own may come into contact with much greater volume of the virus through their work. The JCVI will do their work and will advise us on phase 2 and how we should prioritize that. But that's the plan, is to make sure we have a national debate in a way about what do we do in phase 2 once we've got through phase 1. Now, we start, of course, second dosing in March, and we're already beginning to reserve the second doses, because we'll do first doses 5 to 9, and then second doses 1 to 4.
It would seem to make sense that before you get to 48-year-old me, it probably is wise to do the supermarket workers, the teachers, the police officers, before you get to 48-year-old me. No?
So the over 50s are part of the first cohort of the JCVI, because there was they looked at everything from profession to BAME backgrounds. They felt very clearly that the closest link to serious infection, hospitalization, and death is age. And of course, category 6 is the 16 to 64-year-olds who may have underlying conditions that obviously put them at higher risk. So they'll be captured. So the below the 50 who have other underlying conditions will be captured in it's a very big category, category 6. So that will be done. But then when we get to phase 2, which is the under 50s, you yourself at 48, we will have that question to the JCVI to say, do we go through and do frontline teachers who are younger but don't have any underlying conditions, or do we just keep going with age? They will have to look at the evidence and then obviously advise us, and we'll follow that advice.
Okay. It's been a Herculean effort to get so many people jabbed so quickly. Do you think it's possible by winter that we could be looking at taking a spray or a pill instead of an injection?
So there's lots of technologies out there, and the instruction from the Prime Minister is 2-tiered for us. One is obviously to initially scour the world, and the Vaccine Task Force in my department in Bays did a brilliant job under Kate Bingham and Clive Dix, who's now taken over from Kate in McCubbin. Brilliant people who developed the 7 vaccine strategy for us. Those same manufacturers are already looking at adopting their vaccines to the variants of the virus. So a variant vaccine to the variant virus, a bit of a mouthful. We also this week announced a deal with a messenger RNA company called CureVac, very similar to Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna, where we're going to be able, through our genome sequencing strength in the UK, because we do about 50% of all sequencing of COVID variants, work with CureVac to be ready to produce that next vaccine that works on any variant that may be challenging for us, and manufacture it in the UK, as well as what I call our seventh vaccine, where the Prime Minister visited Scotland, Valneva. That is a whole inactivated virus. So it doesn't just work on the spikes where a mutation may escape and be more virulent. It works on the whole of the virus, because it's a whole inactivated virus. And that is also very much part of our future-proofing plan, so that we will, I think, be in a world where we will annually have a vaccination program. Now, at the moment, they're all injection. There are technologies with pills and others being developed around the world, and we continue to look at those as well. But we are making sure that the UK will always have the capability and the capacity to manufacture the variant vaccines that will deal with any variant virus.
Very clear. Now, many of us have been watching the Channel 4 drama It's a Sin, and I ask you this question as we end HIV test week. People living with HIV are in phase 6 for the vaccine, but only if they have disclosed that HIV status to their GP. Many haven't and still don't want to. The Terence Higgins Trust, also Jonathan Ashworth, have asked why they cannot get it from their HIV clinic instead. What's your answer?
It's a great question. It actually came up in the chamber last week when I delivered the statement on the vaccine deployment program, and I will absolutely look at, because some people don't want, for all sorts of reasons, not least privacy, don't want to sort of share that sort of information with their GP. And I will look at a workaround with the NHS. The NHS will try and everything in its power, and we have a sort of every day in the operations meeting, we have an equality section to look at making sure we get to all groups, including, by the way, other sort of groups that are challenging to reach, whether it's BAME or otherwise. But we will look at a workaround to see whether we can accommodate people if they don't want to share that information with their GP.
Thank you for that clear answer. Now, Labour's Vicky Foxcroft told Times Radio on Friday that she was on a briefing call for MPs last Thursday with Health Minister Edward Argar, also Stephen Powis, and also Dr. Ruth Milton. And in response to questions posed by MPs about the level of vaccine protection provided after 2 jabs for shielders, MPs were told that the 2.2 million shielders would have to continue to shield after having the second jab, as it wasn't clear yet that the vaccine offers enough protection to lift restrictions for them. Is that your understanding?
So we currently are running, or Public Health England are running, 2 major studies into the impact of the vaccines on infection and on transmission. One is called Vivaldi, which is run in residential care homes, and one is called Siren, which is run on frontline healthcare staff who are both in categories 1 and 2 that have had the vaccine. And we will see more data in the next few weeks, which is why the Prime Minister is then able to come to Parliament on the 22nd of February to be able to share that roadmap of how we reopen schools on the 8th of March, and then the roadmap to gradually reopen the economy. But at the moment, we are asking people to remain vigilant and careful, and not sort of go back to normal life, to continue to follow the rules. If you have to shield, you have to shield. If you have to, hands, face, space, that is absolutely important. There are still 33,000 people in hospital with COVID at the moment. So the hospitalization rate is very high. And until we see that begin to come down and have the evidence of the impact. Now, we're very hopeful. Don't get me wrong. I don't want people listening to this to think, oh my God. We are very hopeful that the vaccines will have an impact. We're seeing some great data from Israel. We're collecting our own data. Oxford produced some good data on cutting transmission by 2/3 last week. So, there are good signs, but until we have that, we have to remain cautious and deliberately so.
Okay. Final question from me, and then Tom's going to jump in. But I just want to, if you can answer as quickly as possible, because Tom's desperate to come in. Jeremy Hunt said in a recent interview, your colleague, that Kierstarmer is the biggest threat to the Tories since Tony Blair. Was he right?
I think that the problem Keir has got is some of the calls he's made are, with respect to him, are wrong. So, when he tried to intervene on the JCVI Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation to say we should break the course of vaccination from the 1 to 9 and change it now, and then Rachel Reeves and others had a real problem last weekend trying to explain who would you take away the vaccine from, which category of the most vulnerable, which is 99% of mortality, would you take it away from. I just think he just needs to think through sometimes this stuff before he sort of knee jerks. I think there's a few lessons to learn from Mr. Blair and co.
Mr. Zahawi, good morning. It's Tom.
Morning, Tom.
Let me talk to you about second jabs briefly, if I can. By mid next month, 50 million people in groups 1 to 4, which you'll have done by then. In fact, you'll have done in a week or so's time, you hope, will start needing their second jabs because, of course, that's 12 weeks on from their first jabs. Chris Whitty warned last week there'll be an inevitable slowdown in first jabs when those second jabs first come online and have to start taking priority. I just wonder whether you've had a chance to qualify, calculate how much of a slowdown there will be. Will first jabs go down to a trickle, or can you keep up a reasonable rate?
So it's a great question. We are already beginning to reserve some of the volume for the second jab program beginning in March, as you quite rightly outlined. But we also have a reasonable amount of volume to be able to continue with first jabs, hence why I'm confident that we can do 1 to 9 by May. And we'll be saying more about that next week when we hit the first target, which is mid-May, of the 1 to 4 categories, that 15 million in the UK that are offered the vaccine. But we're going to do both. So today, I can tell you, Tom, that between 11 and 12 o'clock yesterday, we reached almost 1,000 jabs a minute, 979 a minute. That sort of gives you an indication of the infrastructure we've built, the capacity of the capability that we have, both in terms of hospital hubs, obviously GPs who are the backbone of this deployment in primary care, the vaccination centres. There's 100 now national vaccination centres operating, 200 pharmacies.
I get that. Let me just push you quickly, if I can, though, on the second jabs, because you can't do both at the same time, because you then have to effectively double capacity to whatever it is, 4 million, 5 million jabs a week. One thing is going to have to give. So my question again, how many first jabs can you continue to do while you're rolling out second jabs?
So if you do the calculation about the 979 I just told you, or last weekend at 600,000 on a Saturday, single day, we've got the capacity to do first and second jabs. The limiting factor is supply of vaccine. Supply of vaccine is finite, and that's what will limit us. And you'll see that number obviously fluctuate week on week, and then it'll start going up again because I've got tens of millions of doses coming through in the weeks and months to come.